Let's start with the next panel discussion after lunch, and it's always a challenge to hold everyone's attention after lunch, immediately after lunch. So I'm sure we have a very eminent set of panelists, and they will be talking on a very interesting topic, and that will hold the interest of everyone. So the topic is on securing critical energy infrastructure against cyber attacks, mitigating risks and leveraging technology. We have heard a couple of sessions from Nikhil and Hitesh earlier talking about some of the aspects. Now we want to hear from people who are responsible as CISO or the cyber security leaders in power generation companies, talking about how they are looking at different aspects of cyber security. So it's my pleasure to call on stage the panelists. May I call Nitin Chandurkar, Executive Director IT, Maharashtra State Power Generation. It's my pleasure to call on stage Sanghamitra Pyne, Head IT Generation, CESC Ventures from the RPG Group. I'd like to call on stage Vikram Thorat, IES, Assistant Director of Central Electricity Authority, Mumbai, CEA. So as we talk on cybersecurity, with the permission of all the panelists, just like to inform Sanghamitra has a flight to catch. And so may I ask her the questions in the first sequence? So with the permission of all the panelists, I'm starting with her. So couple of areas which I would like to ask is one, when we are talking a cybersecurity perspective from power generation company, and CESC, as we know, is the oldest in the country. I think 1887 was when the first electricity happened in Harrison Road in Calcutta. And since then, and though now it has been privatized, we know, for quite some time with the RPG group. And so my question is to reduce the cybersecurity vulnerabilities in a generation utility scenario. What are the key initiatives that a generation company can take? And we are talking about things like intelligent substations at generation levels. So with those things, how does it alter the dynamics of cybersecurity in the power sector?
Yeah, thank you. And a very good afternoon to all of you and my fellow panelists. So just as he mentioned, I'll give a brief introduction again about CESC. It's one of the oldest, and it was always professionally managed, incorporated in the London Stock Exchange. It was actually never a public sector, and it's under the RPSG group now. And we have generation, distribution, and distribution franchisees as well. So I look after the entire generation stack, including TPPs, as well as we are foraying in a large way into renewables in the sense of setting up solar parks. And we've also won a bid from ACCI on green hydrogen. So coming to the question of cybersecurity, in the morning we saw a session on how attackers are capable of doing malice to smart meters. See, even if renewables were less in the earlier times, smart meters, smart grid has come in big way. Distribution and generation automation is one of the key backbones of any utility. Generation, as all of us thermal power plant operators and engineers know, runs on DCS, runs on SCADA, runs on AQMS. So the first thing is to identify the CII, that is the critical information infrastructure. Make sure that those are protected in a number of ways. See, gone are the days when IT and OT were air-gapped. We used to keep OT completely separate, segregated. But now, for analytics, for reason of visualization, there is a unidirectional integration between IT, OT. So one has to make sure that the firewall configurations, one has to make sure that the basic servers on which your OT systems are running are patched, are made foolproof in in the sense that all very simple things you might say. Are your USB ports open in any of the workstations? Plug all of these things. Make sure there's no net connectivity in the main workstations. Make sure that each and every employee who's using any of your endpoints are thoroughly aware of what to do, what not to do. Phishing attacks are so simple things, one would think that not to click on a link which is unrecognized. But be sure, either due to just, a stupidity of a moment of the human mind. The human mind has a strange way of reacting to fear. That's why, we all pray to those prank calls or those very malicious calls. Similarly, when we see a mail coming from what we think is our MD, what should we do? Maybe have a call and find out that why is such a mail coming to me. Instead, if there is a click on a spoof malicious link, it could lead to a ransomware in your network. So what do? One is, really make the employees aware, do a CII, do your network segmentation, protect the endpoints, EDRs, the MDRs, and make sure there are periodic internal audits, as well as like what we have done is, apart from internal audits, we've completed the ISO 27001, which is the ISMS audit, as well as the survey audits on that. So these are going to tell you what kind of situation you are in. Also very important, have a very robust CCMP, Cyber Crisis Management Plan, in place, because we are a mission critical national, sector. So there are a number of things which, apart from certain, which has a universal accountability, NCIIPC, MOP, CEA. So the Cyber Crisis Management Plan must be in place. Very soon, the DPDP Act rules are going to come out. So generation, we feed to distribution. Distribution is a B2C. So make sure that all the private information are anonymized, are masked, that encryption is a way of life in the coding or in your data storage. So these, I think, will, and what we have additionally done is we've ramped up our SOC, our SIEMs, and we've made sure that we're using parts of AI also, because the parsing of logs is a humongous task. And if you have an engineer who's going to look through thousands and millions of logs to just identify what could be threat perceptions, it would probably lead to some kind of manual error. So it is highly recommended to put in a tool for this kind of SOC SIEM parsing. And the perimeter is now, dissolving. So make sure that the EDRs are in place, your endpoints are patched, your servers are patched, unnecessary ports are closed. And most important, please make sure that all employees are trained and very aware of what could be the unintentional implications, because insider threats are not only intentional, it could often be unintentional. So that, I think, is what I would have to
I'll
say.
take from there and maybe try to qualify a couple of points. You mentioned about increasingly it's becoming difficult to separate the IT and OT network. Having said that, ultimately for a power generation company, IT is not the core business. So the OT part, the OT environment will have servers and other devices which are legacy devices still. It's not practically possible, especially in remote areas or plants. So there, when you're mentioning patching, how will you take care of those legacy devices, especially on the OT front? And two, the AI usage and part of that CCMP that you are mentioning. Again, the challenge is how much AI trained skilled resources. Again, it's not for an IT company, it's a power generation company. How will you attract and maintain that sort of resources with those sort of skill sets?
Yes, very, very pertinent questions. To answer the first part, all of us know that the DCS systems or the SCADA systems are under the OEMs, without whose active cooperation, none of these patch upgrades are possible because the software could cease to operate and that would be a disaster. So, what traditionally happens is there are staging servers or test servers where it's carried out, and now the OEMs are also very aware of the situation which is evolving, and there's a pressure on both the sides. So those, Windows 7 days are not there really anymore. So that's one good thing. And on your the second query that you were saying, that what was that question?
The
On the
skilled
right,
resources when
skill
you're
resource. There are two parts to it. See, our young generation, they are tech savvy in the sense that if you can provide them the tools, and the tools not necessarily have to always be on prem, we have to have a ring fenced environment which is carefully protected from the general web, but at the same time that could be a playing field for your coders, the young coders, to really try out and experiment either on Gen AI or on ML. And the other part is taking the help of SaaS players, because there are a number of cloud based tool sets which really provide groundbreaking provisions for all the sectors. And we have to understand that not everything can be built in house, because the best practices are embedded in certain areas which are already in place. So make sure that the proper SLAs, the proper NDAs, and the proper configuration handshaking happens with your cloud providers, and that will provide a very, very good way of carrying out the AI journey for any utility. And also have a ring fenced environment where young and not so young, because I too dabble in AI programming. I'm interested in it from the time it happened. And we put in ML based predictive maintenance. We are trying with Gen AI. So that will really reap benefits. As I see, it's already doing so.
Okay, so the last question I'd leave you. You mentioned about the SLAs and NDAs with these OEMs when you're talking about, and we know how critical they are. We heard from a couple of them in the morning also. Apart from certain, which applies from the regulatory point, from a sector point of view, regulation wise, are there compliances or conformances that even these SLAs that you are looking at, because there's a critical, it cannot be even 99.999, that won't do. It's critical, really critical infrastructure. The country is running on it. So how do you ensure those SLAs or NDAs they are conformed to? Having them is one thing, but
Yes. So there are two parts to it. See, one is that you have your KPIs, right? Generation KPIs are there, the PAPs, the PLFs, the SHRs. That's one part of it. The other part of it is whatever IT tools you're using with cloud providers, SaaS providers, there are very good monitoring applications. Some of them are, in fact, we've built some of them in house, and some of them are available online. And that give very clear pictures on uptime. They give very clear pictures on the trends, and you can clearly identify both from an economic point of view, because believe me, one of the bigger headaches that people are facing now is trying to understand the economic model of a cloud infrastructure which they've hired. Because at the end of the day, probably they've been signing without understanding what goes into the cybersecurity part of it. And when now we try to see that if the configurations are in place, there we understand there's another line in the BOM probably would have been missed. So make sure that those kind of SLA agreements are very much there while you're drawing up the contract. Apart from, keep the monitoring tools on hand, not only with the cloud provider, but with the person who's actually going to help you when you see what your KPIs are at, or when you're doing the economic payouts.
okay. So just last 30 seconds, the future of cybersecurity for the power sector.
I would say it's a very loaded question. because there's no clear answer to it. The way it's almost like, you know, those new strains of COVID and the new vaccines that were coming up, and then there was a confusion on what to do and what not to do. While we are all trying to, you know, be proactive, but there's a huge community out there, be it the dark web, be it the geopolitic malicious players, be it the simple people who are getting defrauded by a huge community who are being trained abroad. Indians being kept captive. You have all maybe read stories. Indian young youth being taken abroad, kept in captivity, made to make false calls to citizens and demand things based on cyber crimes. The same thing is happening in a large scale for geopolitical policies, and we are at a cusp of a very critical stage in a lot of ways, from our neighbors or from wars which are going on anyway. So it's a very loaded story, but there's optimism because we have partners in place. Our ecosystem is learning, it's developing. There are AI tools which are helping us to keep up. It would have been near nigh impossible, you know, for just the development of a human brain to keep up with the kind of malice that is happening, because the dark web players are using AI to attack us. So it has to be a kind of a reciprocation of that sort. So it will be tough times, it will be challenging times, but it will also be interesting times. And there's a lot of focus both from GOI, from the private sector, from all the authorities which are helping along the way. I shall have a special shout out to NCIIPC, who have really helped us in our journey of creating the CII and CCMP roadmaps. And have a very good audit practice is what I would say, so that vulnerabilities which creep in gradually can be plugged and put in, you know, remediation as soon as possible.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. So I'll just, since you have a flight to catch, before we let you go, I'll request Sanjay Marudkar sir to come and hand over Sanghamitra ma'am a token of appreciation. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So continuing with the discussion, I'll now come to Nitin Chandurkar. Almost similar question, which I moved to. I'll start from a Mahajanko perspective. What are the initiatives, I would say, undertaken? There are cybersecurity challenge. Key initiatives that you would like to highlight, and especially when we are talking about smart substations, intelligent substations, smart meters, then from a generation company perspective, what are those key security initiatives that you have put in place?
Yeah, good afternoon. So basically this intelligence substations and growing the need of IT automation and the management requirement to connect to the OT systems to get those data, the surface of digitization is increasing. With the increase of this surface, definitely there is a attacks dynamics are also increasing basically. So what Mahajanko means purely initially what used to happen that OT and IT, they are the separate environments. So there is a isolation altogether. So there is nothing passing from the IT network to OT or the vice versa. So that way we were safe, even though the plants and those running on the outdated technologies or outdated OS, still we manage survive this till the time. But nowadays it is a need of our that we have to go for the automation, we have to go and adopting this best industrial practices to survive in the industry. So based on that, means that as she mentioned about the practices and those things, but attacker thinks or he is ahead of us actually. So whenever we think about any policies or the government comes with the policies, by the time we implement those policies, there will be something new comes and the attacker will leverage that particular things and try to get into the systems. So as far as the Mahajanko IT and the OT infrastructure is concerned, so we are a part and parcel of this NCIPC framework. We bound by the certain. So whatever the policies are coming from them, I ensure that it has been implemented in the particular way. And it's not just implementation on the paper or something. We see that it should be managed or done through the tools, some technological tools basically in the automated way. For example, uh, we use like for example the antivirus. So rather than going on the signature based antiviruses, we see it should be the AI based or the what is the behavior based antiviruses that we saw and we have implemented, which help us a lot. And Mahajanko is the one of the organization. The way the Sophos has mentioned about their one of the product is called MDR. So MDR is a manage, detect, and response. So we have our own CSOC center. So by means of implementing that particular product, so continuously means continuously those what are the attacks which is coming to our network being monitored and continuously monitor and get reverted also. So we saw means I personally see those records, see those logs. So what computers is getting compromised, where the attackers get that particular open space to go into the system. So that particular implementation or such implementation with the AI based or the automatic way implementation that definitely help us to cut down our limitations on that particular attacks. Above all, so what are the practices we do? Generally, people go and blacklist the slide. Whatever the site, whatever the URLs, that they go and blacklist. But what we have implemented the whitelisting approach. So whatever is required to us, so that is only open for the forum or open for the usability. So it's not that all is open. So whenever the request come from the departments, so that particular sites we get blacklisted, whitelisted. We go check their score, whether it is a valid site or not site, whether it is being can be whitelisted or not, and based on that we take those decisions, and that way we have managed the attackers or means getting into the not getting into the attacks. In spite of having the best practices in place and getting it implemented right, patching up, and then we have a single domain, we have the active directory, common active directories. So that way, so we have a single way where the attack can so that we get a single domain where whenever we found and we completely monitoring it in an automated way. Like one of the best practice again I want to share. So in domain controller, so we have implemented a read-only domain controller rather than it's a open for all. So that way nobody can go and change anything, even though the attack happened. So it will not go and it cannot harm the complete network because it has a read-only data controllers. It cannot go and change the things. So that way we have done, and then basic things like multi-factor authentication, regular trainings, regular audits. So we have done this ISMS 20007, so we are being audited. We have those auditors in place, and then regularly every 6 months we do IT audit as well as the OT audit also. So by means of saying that it's not just go and check the devices, but we do VAPTs also. So continuously VAPT happening. So whatever the lacunas, whatever the comes from the auditors, so that we go and try to club that gap, those particular gaps. So like, and then continuously we are I want to thanks to the management also, because it's purely new to them also to understand this IT and coming with this IT speed also, ki whatever is coming. So, but they understand the need, and they generally they help us to get those proposals through, get those procurement through to implement, and which help us to implement those technologies in a very right sense actually. So, right apart from this, we are in touch with CISO, and then we already done our CISO nominations. We have, I am the one who handling the CISO responsibility for Mahajanko. Then we have CIMM plan in place, so we handle those. We have CII, which is done for our hydro station basically, if you are going for the thermals now. Then we are on boarding with the Swachh Bharat Kendra, so which is already in place, which is a certain who is monitoring all those IPs whenever the IPs is blocked or so they continuously hammering us, ki, okay, this is the IP which is creating a problem, go and block it. So that means I cannot say that we can stop the attack, but at least we can delay it and we can make it localized actually by means of that. So that is what from the
reduce the impact
Reduce the impact,
of the attack. Thanks. Vikram, Thorat, I think first, what a question I'd like to put to you from a CEA perspective, especially for the OT, on the OT security front. What sort of regulatory mechanisms or some regulations that have been put in place for the power generation companies, especially in the OT security front?
Good afternoon all. So I think this is the most difficult session of the day. Not in terms of the topic, but in terms of the timing. I just had a lunch and I hope we'll be able to keep you awake for next 10-15 minutes. So coming back to our topic, CEA is a regulatory framework making body for the Ministry of Power, and vision of the CEA is to make affordable, accessible and safe, adequate quality of power supply available to all the consumers in the country. So today's our main topic is energy transition. So while we talk about energy transition, we cannot forget the safety and security of our grid also, and people who are working in the domain of energy also. So up until 2020, we at CEA we did not have any wing specifically dedicated to cyber security. But when the 2020 Mumbai case happened, after that CEA has dedicated a cyber security wing based in New Delhi, and after that in lines with this CERT-in, we have also made our own computer security incident response team. So it is called as CSIRT Power. So it is similar to CERT-in, just in the field of power, it is making new regulations and guidelines. And sir, this CSIRT Power has recently published guidelines for cyber security in power sector, and also we are in the preparation of new regulations, and those regulations have been put up for public comments. So up until 10th September, all of you can visit CA website, and there the draft of these regulations have been put up for the public comments. So whatever comments you feel you want to add to that, you can give it there, and we will consider them before finalizing our these regulations. So the salient points of this certain regulations are, it is first of all we have to develop a 5-layer mechanism to address these cyber security attacks. So these are layered as prevention is the first layer, which means you have to avoid the attack altogether in the first place. So for that there are certain mechanisms like firewall and all other things. Secondly, you can have a detection system. So this is the second layer. First there is a prevention, second there is a detection. So third is response. When the threat is detected, you have to respond it as soon as possible in order to prevent the attack from coming through. So that is third step. Fourth step is recovery. So like other panel members suggested, you can never 100% cut off a cyber attack from happening. So in case that happens, you have to recover from it as soon as possible. So you have to isolate the part of the system which has been fallen prey to the attackers, and other ways are there. In that way you can have a recovery. And for fifth and most important is awareness and training. So in that front, CE has published 14-point guidelines, and some of the points which I have wrote down are risk assessment and management. So you have to assess the risk and make a team for the looking after the management of these risks. Second is dedicated cyber security division. I hope all of the generation and transmission companies are having the dedicated cyber security team right now. and it should be led by a person who is professional in the field of this information and security, and he should be appointed as a chief information security officer. So like in the field of electrical safety, we appoint a electrical safety officer who has background in electrical and who is thorough with all the CA safety regulation. Just like on those lines, we have made a regulation to make appointment of a chief information security officer. So he should be looking after the policies and governance frameworks of the organization, and it should be his responsibility to ensure that all the CA's regulation which have been published and are in the process are applied in your organization. So next is SOP. So there should be a standard operating procedure for each organization to deal with these cyber attacks. Next is training of your personnel. So whatever relevant training you feel are required for your organization, you should be able to proceed with this training and give your employees this training. Next is crisis management plan. So sir also talked about it in details. So I'm just briefing you about the major salient points in the CA regulations that is going to be published very soon. It is in the public domain right now for comments, and all of us are invited to comment your points of view on these regulations. Apart from that, there should be a cyber security audit of your organization every year. So what threats did you receive in that year? What actions did you take in order to address these threats? And what is your future planning in order to secure or safeguard your organization from cyber attacks? So for this audit, you have to check the vulnerabilities and set up an information security management system. And there is a ISO IEC standard 27001, which you can refer in order to have this cyber security audit. So this the CA regulations.
And is in your presentation
Yeah,
anything
all these
beyond
points
this?
are there only. So
Okay,
we'll just keep
okay.
with the
So thanks.
presentation
So
part.
then we'll just conclude this discussion very briefly. 30 seconds to you. Again, what I put to ma'am also, the future of cybersecurity for the power sector.
Yeah, the future definitely means by current scenario, if you see, we are there are a lot of things needs to be improved actually, but the way power sector and the way government agencies are guiding and the policy has been making, so those will going to help us in the near future to get the what we can say cyber Swachh Bharat definitely, and there are some tools, some AI, MLs, and those can be used to destroy those attacks or to refrain from those attacks basically. So definitely following the basic guidelines, basic principles of the Swachhata definitely going to help us. And the way now, because initially it used to happen, the people are not aware about the computers and the smart, but because of smartphone and then everything, so everybody has a knack of it, that what is going to happen now, the email security or the phishing emails and all those things, everybody is aware now. Now means that's not a case because that what is going to happen, they're sharing with the password, sharing with the OTPs. So everybody has somewhere some sense on that. So that definitely some awareness are there. So if we see and go under the floor on the power stations or the office floors basically, so people are well aware, and then being an IT man, we have already started putting those policies in place. We have this standardization like ISOs, and those are in place. So I feel if we follow those basic principles and if we stick to the basics, so we can definitely cut down on the attacks basically.
Okay. Thank you.